ادعوا ربكم تضرعا وخفية إنه لا يحب المعتدين.
Call upon your Lord with humility and in secret. Surely He does not love the transgressors.
ولا تفسدوا في الأرض بعد إصلاحها وادعوه خوفا وطمعا إن رحمة الله قريب من المحسنين.
And do not make mischief in the earth after it has been set in order, and call upon Him with fear and longing. Surely Allah's mercy is close to those who do good. And do not make mischief in the earth after it has been set in order.
The command not to make mischief in the earth means not to vitiate the right order of life. What basically constitutes mischief-making is to surrender oneself to one's lusts, to commit acts in subservience to other human beings, and to subscribe to base morals, social orders, civilizations, principles, and laws derived from sources other than God's guidance. This is the essential mischief from which innumerable evils issue and which the Quran seeks to eradicate. The Quran also emphasizes that sound order is the original condition, and disorder and mischief occurred later as accidents resulting from man's ignorance and transgression. In other words, man's life on earth did not start with ignorance, savagery, polytheistic beliefs, rebellion against God, and moral disorder whereafter reforms were gradually introduced. On the contrary, man's life began with good order and was later corrupted because of man's perversity and folly. God sent prophets from time to time in order to eradicate the disorder that had set in and to restore the original good order. These prophets constantly exhorted people to refrain from disrupting the original order and creating mischief. Thus, the Quranic view on this question is altogether different from that of the proponents of the false doctrine of evolution, who postulate that man has gradually come out of darkness into light, that life has advanced in a unilinear fashion towards increasingly better conditions. The Quran rather postulates that human life began in the full light of divine guidance, that the original state of affairs was in accord with the right way prescribed by God. The blame for corruption goes to man, who, falling victim to Satan's allurements, veered towards darkness and corrupted the right order of human life again and again. As for God, He continually sent prophets in order to summon men from darkness to light, and ask them to eschew evil and wickedness,
and call upon Him with fear and longing.
This clearly shows what the expression mischief-making in the verse signifies. It consists of man's turning to others than God as his guardian, patron, and helper, and calling them to his aid and support. To bring about reform, therefore, consists of man's turning exclusively to God as his guardian and helper. Calling upon Allah with fear and longing conveys the idea that man should fear God alone, and to Him alone he should look for the fulfillment of his wishes. While calling upon God, man should realize that he is totally dependent on God's favor, and that he can attain success only if God helps and guides him to it. Similarly, man should also bear in mind that once he is deprived of God's support, he is doomed to utter failure and undoing.
وهو الذي يرسل الرياح بشرا بين يدي رحمته حتى إذا أقلت سحابا ثقالا سقناه لبلد ميت فأنزلنا به الماء فأخرجنا به من كل الثمرات كذلك نخرج الموتى لعلكم تذكرون.
And it is He who sends forth winds as glad tidings in advance of His mercy. And when they have carried a heavy laden cloud, we drive it to a dead land. Then we send down rain from it and bring forth therewith fruits of every kind. In this manner do we raise the dead, that you may take heed.
والبلد الطيب يخرج نباته بإذن ربه والذي خبث لا يخرج إلا نكدا كذلك نصرف الآيات لقوم يشكرون.
As for the good land, vegetation comes forth in abundance by the command of its Lord, whereas from the bad land, only poor vegetation comes forth. Thus do we expound our signs in diverse ways for a people who are grateful.
Whereas from the bad land, only poor vegetation comes forth.
It is necessary to grasp the subtle point made here in order to appreciate the full purport of what is being said. The reference to rain and its advantages is intended to bring into focus God's power and to affirm life after death.
Moreover, it is also intended to draw attention in allegorical, albeit graphic terms to the blessings of prophethood and how it helps men to distinguish between good and evil, between pure and impure.
The intimation of divine guidance through the prophets is compared to the movement of winds, the appearance of rain-laden clouds, and the fall of life-sustaining raindrops. In the same way as rainfall causes dead earth to be revived and makes the hidden treasures of life burst forth from its womb, so the impact of the teachings of the prophets also brings dead humanity back to life, causing the hidden goodness in men to burst forth. This allegory also hints at another important fact. In the same way that only fertile soil profits from rainfall, so only men of a righteous nature can profit from the blessings of prophethood. As for the wicked, they are like wasteland. Rainfall can cause such a land to bring forth only thorny bushes and cacti. Similarly, when the wicked come into contact with the teaching of the prophets, the hidden evils of their nature come into full play. This allegory is followed by a well-sustained account with illustrations from history, showing that whenever the prophets preached their message, men split into two camps. The righteous receive the blessings of prophethood and flourish, bringing forth the fruit of their goodness. As for the wicked, once the criterion provided by the prophets is applied, their impurities are fully exposed. This enables human society to purge itself of impurities in the same way as the goldsmith purges precious metals of alloy.
لقد أرسلنا نوحا إلى قومه فقال يا قوم اعبدوا الله ما لكم من إله غيره فقال يا قوم اعبدوا الله ما لكم من إله غيره إني أخاف عليكم عذاب يوم عظيم.
Indeed, we sent forth Noah to his people, and he said, O my people, serve Allah, you have no other God than Him. Indeed, I fear for you the chastisement of an awesome day. Indeed, we sent forth Noah to his people. This historical narrative opens with an account of the prophet Noah, peace be upon him, and his people. For the people of Noah, peace be upon him, were the first to drift away from the right way of life, which was followed by the prophet Adam, peace be upon him, and his descendants. God therefore sent Noah, peace be upon him, to guide and reform them. In light of the Quranic allusions and biblical statements, it seems certain the people of Noah, peace be upon him, inhabited the land presently known as Iraq. This view is also supported by inscriptions of pre-biblical times discovered in the course of archaeological excavations in Babylonia. Those inscriptions contain almost the same account which is recounted in the Quran and the Torah. The locale of the event is the vicinity of Mosul. Kurdish and Armenian traditions also corroborate this account insofar as they mention that it was in this area that Noah's Ark anchored. Some relics ascribed to Noah, peace be upon him, are still found in Jazirat ibn Umar, situated to the north of Mosul and on the frontiers of Armenia in the vicinity of the Ararat mountain mass. The inhabitants of Nakhchivan believe to this day that their town was founded by Noah, peace be upon him. Traditions similar to the story of Noah, peace be upon him, are also found in classical Greek, Egyptian, Indian, and Chinese literature. Moreover, stories of identical import have been popular since time immemorial in Burma, Malaya, the East Indies, Australia, New Guinea, and various parts of Europe and America.
This shows clearly that the event took place at some point in the dim past when men lived together in one region, and it was after Noah's flood that they dispersed to different parts of the world. This is why traditions of all nations mention the flood of the early time. This is notwithstanding the fact that the actual event has increasingly been shrouded in mystery, and the authentic elements of the event overlaid with myth and legend.
You have no other God than Him.
It is evident from the above verse and from the Quranic descriptions of the people of Noah, peace be upon him, that they were neither ignorant of nor denied the existence of God, nor were they opposed to the idea of worshipping Him. Their real malady was polytheism. They had associated others with God in His Godhead, and considered them akin to God in their claim that human beings should worship them as well. This basic error gave rise to a number of evils among them. There had arisen among them a class of people representing the false gods they themselves had contrived. Gradually, this class of people virtually monopolized all religious, economic, and political authority. This class also introduced a hierarchical structure of society which led to immense corruption and injustice. The moral degeneration which this system promoted sapped the roots of mankind's higher characteristics. When corruption reached a high peak, God sent Noah, peace be upon him, to improve the state of affairs. For long, Noah, peace be upon him, strove with patience and wisdom to bring about reform. All his efforts, however, were thwarted by the clergy, which craftily kept people under its powerful hold. Eventually, Noah prayed to God not to spare even a single unbeliever on the face of the earth, for they would go about misguiding human beings, and their progeny would likewise be wicked and ungrateful. For a detailed discussion, see Hud 11:25-48, Al-Shu'ara 26:105-22, and Nuh 71:1-28.
قال الملأ من قومه إنا لنراك في ضلال مبين.
The leading men of his people replied, "We see that you are in palpable error."
قال يا قوم ليس بي ضلالة ولكني رسول من رب العالمين.
He said, "O my people, there is no error in me, but I am a messenger from the Lord of the universe.
أبلغكم رسالات ربي وأنصح لكم وأعلم من الله ما لا تعلمون.
I convey to you the messages of my Lord, give you sincere advice, and I know from Allah that which you do not know.
أَوَعَجِبْتُمْ أَنْ جَاءَكُمْ ذِكْرٌ مِّن رَّبِّكُمْ عَلَى رَجُلٍ مِّنكُمْ لِيُنذِرَكُمْ وَلِتَتَّقُوا وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ.
Do you wonder that admonition should come to you from your Lord through a man from amongst yourselves, that he may warn you, that you may avoid evil, and that mercy may be shown to you? That he may warn you, that you may avoid evil, and that mercy may be shown to you.
There were striking similarities between Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Noah, peace be upon him. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, received the same treatment from his people as did Noah, peace be upon him, from his. The message that each of them sought to preach was also the same. Likewise, the doubts and objections raised by the people of Muhammad, peace be upon him, with regard to his prophethood were the same as those raised by Noah's people, peace be upon him, several thousand years ago. Again, what Muhammad, peace be upon him, said in response to the doubts and objections raised against him were exactly the same as what Noah had said. The Quranic narration of the stories of the prophets makes it amply clear that the attitude of the nations to whom the prophets were sent had always been the same as that of the Makkans towards the message of Muhammad, peace be upon him. Apart from this, the accounts of the various prophets and their people display the same striking resemblances. Likewise,
the Prophet Muhammad's, peace be upon him, vindication of his teaching in response to the Makkans is identical with similar attempts by other prophets to vindicate their teachings.
So doing, the Quran seeks to emphasize that in the same way as the error and misguidance of which men become victims have remained essentially the same throughout the ages, the message of God's messengers has also been the same in all places and at all times. Again, there is a striking resemblance in the ultimate fate of all those peoples who reject the message of the prophets and who persist in their erroneous and evil ways. This too has also been the same, namely, utter destruction.
فكذبوه فأنجيناه والذين معه في الفلك وأغرقنا الذين كذبوا بآياتنا إنهم كانوا قوما عمين.
But they charged him with falsehood. Thereupon we delivered Noah, peace be upon him, and those who were with him in the ark, and caused those who rejected our signs as false to be drowned. Surely they were a blind folk, and caused those who rejected our signs as false to be drowned.
An uninitiated reader of the Quran may mistakenly conceive that the mission of each prophet to call his people to God would have finished after the few attempts they made in that connection. Some people might even entertain a rather simplistic image of their mission. It might be thought that a prophet would have suddenly risen and proclaimed to his people that he had been designated by God as a prophet. This would have been followed by the raising of objections to that claim. Subsequently, the prophet concerned would have explained the matter and might have removed their misgivings. The people would have stuck to their position, would have rejected the prophet's claims and called him a liar. Whereupon God must have visited that people with punishment. The fact of the matter, however, is that the Quran has narrated in just a few lines a story that was worked out over a long period of time. The brevity of the Quranic description owes itself to the fact that the Quran is not interested per se in storytelling, that its narration and purpose are didactic. Hence, while recounting a historical event, the Quran mentions only those fragments of the event which are relevant, ignoring those details which are irrelevant to Quranic purposes. Again, at different places in the Quran, the same event is mentioned for a variety of reasons. On every occasion, only those fragments of the story which are relevant to a specific purpose are mentioned and the rest are left out. An instance in point is the above narrative about Noah, peace be upon him. In narrating Noah's story, peace be upon him, the Quran aims to point out the consequences attendant upon the rejection of the Prophet's message. Since the total period spent on conveying the message does not have any direct relationship with that purpose, the Quran altogether ignores it here. However, in passages where the Prophet, peace be upon him, and the companions have been asked to remain patient, the long duration of the Prophet Noah's missionary effort, peace be upon him, has been mentioned. This has been done precisely with a view to raising the morale of the believers and to prevent them from feeling low because they did not see any good results coming out of that struggle. By mentioning how Noah, peace be upon him, strove patiently for such a long period of time and in the face of discouraging circumstances is quite relevant in this context, as it helps to teach the lesson which is intended. That lesson is to persist in serving the cause of the truth and to refuse to be daunted by the adversity of the circumstances. See Al-Ankabut 29:14. It would be appropriate to remove at this stage a doubt which might agitate the minds of some people. For one frequently reads in the Quran accounts of nations which rejected their prophets and charged them with lying. One also reads about the prophets warning them of God's punishment, and then about its sudden advent, scourging the nation and totally destroying it. This gives rise to the question, why do such catastrophic incidents not take place in our own time? Nations still rise and fall, but the phenomenon of their rise and fall is of a different nature. We do not see it happen that a nation is served with a warning and is then totally destroyed by a calamity such as an earthquake, a flood, a storm, or a thunderbolt. In order to understand this, it should be remembered that a nation which has directly received God's message from a prophet is treated by God in a different manner from nations which have not witnessed a prophet. For if a nation directly witnesses a prophet, an embodiment of righteousness, and receives God's message from his tongue, it has no valid excuse left for rejecting that message. And if it still rejects the message, it indeed deserves to be summarily punished. Other nations are to be placed in a different category since they received God's message indirectly. Hence, if the nations of the present time are not visited by the devastating punishments which struck the nations of the prophets in the past, one need not wonder since prophethood came to an end with the advent of Muhammad, peace be upon him. One should indeed have cause to wonder if one saw the opposite happen. That is, if the nations of the present were visited by punishments from God which had afflicted those nations that rejected their prophets face to face. This does not mean, however, that God has ceased to inflict severe punishments on nations which turn away from God and are sunk in ideological and moral error. The fact is that God's punishments still afflict different nations of the world. These punishments are both minor and major. Minor punishments are aimed at warning those nations, and the major ones are of a much more serious character and cause considerable damage. However, in the absence of the prophets who are wont to draw attention to moral degeneration as the basic cause of these calamities, the historians and thinkers of our time only scratch the surface and explain these in terms of physical laws or historical causes. These sophisticated explanations are of little help. On the contrary, nations so afflicted with heedlessness and moral stupor are thereby further prevented from appreciating that God has always warned evil-doing nations against following their evil ways, and that when they willfully disregard these warnings and adamantly stick to their erroneous ways, He ultimately inflicts disastrous punishments upon them.
وإلى عاد أخاهم هودا قال يا قوم اعبدوا الله ما لكم من إله غيره أفلا تتقون.
And to Ad we sent forth their brother Hud, peace be upon him. He said, O my people, serve Allah, you have no other God than He. Will you then not avoid evil? And to Ad we sent forth their brother Hud, peace be upon him.
Ad, an ancient Arab people, were well known throughout Arabia. They were known for their proverbial glory and grandeur. And when they were destroyed, their extinction also came proverbial. So much so that the word Adi has come to be used for things ancient, and the word Adiyat for archaeological remains. The land whose owner is unknown and which is lying fallow from neglect is called Adi al-Ard. The ancient Arabic poetry is replete with references to this people. Arab genealogists consider the Ad as the foremost among the extinct tribes of Arabia. Once a person of the Banu Dhul bin Shayban tribe, who was a resident of Ad territory, called on the Prophet, peace be upon him. He related stories to the Prophet, peace be upon him, about the people of Ad, stories handed down to the people of that region from generation to generation. According to the Quran, the people of Ad lived mainly in the Ahqaf region, which is situated to the southwest of the empty quarter, Arub al-Khali, which lies between Hijaz, Yemen, and Yamama. It was from there that the people of Ad spread to the western coast of Yemen and established their hegemony in Oman, Hadramaut, and Iraq. There is very little archaeological evidence about the Ad. Only a few ruins in South Arabia are ascribed to them. At a place in Hadramaut, there is a grave which is considered to be of the Prophet Hud, peace be upon him. James R. Wellstead, a British naval officer, discovered an ancient inscription in 1837 in a place called Hisne al-Ghurab, which contains a reference to the Prophet Hud, peace be upon him. The contents unmistakably bear out that it had been written by those who followed the Sharia of Hud.
قال الملأ الذين كفروا من قومه إنا لنراك في سفاهة وإنا لنظنك من الكاذبين.
The unbelievers among the leading men of his people said, Indeed, we see you in folly and consider you to be a liar.
قال يا قوم ليس بي سفاهة ولكني رسول من رب العالمين.
He said, O my people, there is no folly in me. Rather, I am a messenger from the Lord of the universe.
أبلغكم رسالات ربي وأنا لكم ناصح أمين.
I convey to you the messages of my Lord, and I give you sincere advice.